Gosh. All right. Welcome back. Hope people are having a good Memorial Day. Talk about that a little more. And then we got some other stuff. This is the name of the stream is pretty accurate to what we're going to be discussing today. So I'll give people a minute or two to hop in. I don't do my usual spiel. You know who I am, what we're going to do, how you follow me. Oh, I gotta find out that thing too. All right. People are starting to come in. Welcome. My name is David. This is Fresh Faces New Ideas. You can follow me here at Fresh Faces New Ideas at twitch.tv/Fresh Faces New Ideas. You can follow me on YouTube at Fresh Faces New Ideas, and you can follow me on Twitter at Faces Ideas. We had an interesting show. There was stuff I was going to cover, and then I decided, it wasn't worth it. But there's a lot to talk about. This is going to be an interesting discussion. We're going to cover some of the Memorial Day hypocrisy, and basically, like it says in the title, how do we protect the things that the people who we are remembering, the people we are celebrating? How do we protect the things that they fought for? How do we, make sure that the democracy that so many people died for remains a democracy? So as people come in, we'll do that. There's a couple stories. One of them doesn't directly have to do with the actual democracy stuff. It has to do with just some of the other things, the way our country runs, and how to make things better because of just the things that are said. There we go. Okay. Viewer. Wait for more people to come in, and then we'll get started. But it's I hope people had a good weekend. I don't know if I'll stream this weekend. We'll see. It'll be. We'll have to see what happens. But it's, long weekend now. I don't know how many people will ultimately have for this stream, but anyone who comes in is always welcome. I know they're doing until further notice tonight, so I'll try to watch that. Might have another panel or something coming up. That we'll see. So we'll set that up, but till then, just nice, easy. Well, I mean, it's not gonna be nice and easy. This stream is going to be more toward like trying to move things forward, like some of the issues we're facing and how we can truly deal with them. So we'll see, man. More people hopefully will pop in a minute or two, and then we'll get to it. Nice and easy, nice. A lot of stuff to cover. I mean, I keep saying nice and easy, but it's, there's a lot of stuff to cover. Hopefully people, hop into chat and say stuff so we can have a conversation about some of this stuff. But it's a lot of there's a lot going on. Not legislatively, because the lawmakers, they work like two weeks a month. So they're off for this week. And then we'll see. I think they're going to try to pass the infrastructure bill by the first week. By the end of next week is my understanding. I think the 7th is what Buttigieg was talking about. So we'll see there. But no, for those of you who are just joining, yes, happy Memorial Day. Hope everyone has a good one. We're going to talk about Memorial Day just, in broad terms very quickly about some of the things about it. And just like the fake outrage for some of this stuff and just, how it's used, like a lot of things it's used, as a cudgel to like downplay other progress. Mostly we'll discuss very briefly the tweet for the Kamala's tweet, just because it's just the hypocrisy involved in it. Things like that. And then we're going to discuss also the hat shop in Nashville, because this is just disgusting and needs to be covered. Then we're going to talk about Sidney Powell and the danger that she represents in the weird way that she represents a danger. And then we're going to talk about what's going on in Texas. And then we're going to go talk about the filibuster as well and the ending of the January 6th commission. So, first and foremost, everyone who's here, thank you. Thank you for joining. Let me just post. Here's the Discord link. If you're new and you're not part of the Discord, please join the Discord. It keeps you up to date when I go live. If you're not on Twitch and then it doesn't give you updates there, if you have things that you want to discuss with me, you can post them there. If you want to actually come on and discuss actual things, the Discord is a good way to do it. So it's easy like that. So the tweet I was talking about. So apparently Kamala Harris tweeted out, "Have a happy long weekend, everybody," in reference to Memorial Day. And of course, conservatives lost their fucking minds because they have to have their fake patriotism. And I say it's fake patriotism because they spent 4 years behind a guy who referred to soldiers as losers, who told them that they didn't like soldiers being captured, who didn't go to the cemetery in France because it was raining. He basically just spent a whole lot of time just disregarding the military, and they were fine with that. Also, it's, very often we hear this argument of, why, how dare we help another country, or we still have homeless veterans, or we still have homeless people. But then anytime there is a bill incited to shift money or funds into those, the response is, you're a socialist, communist, Marxist cock, and you just want to destroy America, and you hate the troops. Or anytime there's an argument to cut the military budget. Keep in mind, we're not actually really in conflict with anybody, and our military budget is almost $1 trillion a year. Why? Just putting money into the Pentagon and to arms manufacturers doesn't mean you're supporting the troops. Not sending them off into wars, not protecting their health care when they come back, giving them better mental health care, dealing with the fact that 22 veterans kill themselves every day from suicide, would be, a little bit more of a effective way to deal with, the actual way to honor our veterans, not fake platitudes and, endless greed for an endless war, things like that, dealing with the actual issues that the veterans are dealing with. The ones who for Vietnam who are still dealing with all the side effects from the chemicals and stuff over there, or the ones from Iraq who are dealing with the fire pits that they used to have, that Jon Stewart was arguing about, that took years from them, or the veterans at home the police officers. Don't say people in lawmakers in Texas. I don't understand how you can have this cognitive dissonance. You can say, "Oh, we back the blue," and then you pass a law for constitutional carry that says that anybody can get a handgun, which we hear this all the time. Whenever they talk about having dealing with AR weapons or high capacity weapons, they're like, "Ooh, you don't know what you're talking about. The real issue are handguns." So in response to that, Texas's response is, "Oh, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna make it so that anybody can get access to a handgun without a license and without training, and then from there they can decide to just carry it, whether they want to carry it openly or concealed." Now, let me ask you this: if you are a police officer and you pull up to a scene of reported gunfire, because this is America, so every single day you will have to deal with this, and you just see a bunch of people with their weapons drawn, who's the bad guy? Because there's a good chance that one side of those people could easily be wearing high-tech tactical gear. They're wearing the bulletproof vest. They're carrying heavy weaponry. They could potentially be carrying top killer bullets, which are a thing that we sell, which the only use of them is to punch through body armor. I would love for some gun enthusiasts to tell me why we sell cop killer bullets, which are only designed to kill police officers. I explain that rationale to me. We love our police, but we're going to sell you ammo to kill them? Why? How does that make their job safer? And somebody explained to me how having anybody carry a weapon and not even require them to get training. Look, I understand that you can't, put a whole lot of barriers up on for like financial barriers, because it's ultimately going to, the more financial barriers you have, the less likely someone who is poor is going to have access to a firearm. This is the same argument for voting. If you put a lot of barriers for someone to get an ID, it's going to be harder for that person to get an ID. Now, obviously, it's different because nobody has ever died from casting a vote. So there are, this is some type of argument that you can have. But the idea that it's like a $40, it's a $40 licensing fee, and then you skip all the paperwork and you don't have to do anything training except maybe an online course, and that's somehow going to make people safer. It doesn't make sense, because as I have covered over and over again, and I will discuss this with anyone because I have the data, people with guns, just regular citizens with firearms, are not the answer to dealing with hold on. Are not the answer to dealing with mass shootings, because the data does not purport that they are the ones who stop them. Texas is, look, the fact that the biggest example I've had, the largest study, was done in Texas, just further undercuts their argument. And even their police officers don't want the people in Texas to have this type of thing. The only thing they accepted from this was that the officers can just stop people because they have a suspicion about whether they can carry a gun. But if you don't have a license, how does this work? Like I want, can someone explain to me how this works? Like you can't, if you don't have to have a license, what is the point of the police stopping you? Like, what are they looking for? Like, are you carrying a gun? Like, do you just carry your gun license in your wallet? Now, I don't have a firearm, so maybe somebody who actually does can explain to me. Yes, I carry my gun license in my firearm or in my wallet because I know Philando Castile did, and when he went for it, they shot him. So if you're just walking down the street, wouldn't that be the same thing as carrying your immigration papers? So like, how is that going to work? Nothing this law does makes any sense except for allowing more people to carry a firearm, which is ultimately going to lead to more people being shot. And I know the argument is, oh, well, how am I supposed to defend myself? It's actually, if you look at the data, you're more likely to have, you're more likely to shoot somebody or yourself or accidentally if you have access to a firearm than if you don't. You're more likely to successfully commit suicide if you have access to a firearm than if you don't. So, like, I don't understand. Like, this idea that, Memorial Day is about, thanking the troops for their sacrifices is true. It's good. But there's so much stuff that's going on that's used as, like, a cover for, that things like this is used as a cover for. And it's just antithetical to the idea. I mean, the idea is not, we've been through this long enough that the idea that having more firepower is going to slow down these shootings is just not true. We have enough data to prove that if you actually focus on dealing with the issues at the root cause, whether it's poverty, whether it is mental illness, whether it is dealing with these wars, you can actually improve the lives of the people much better if you reach out to things in a certain way than if you just give unlimited access to firearms. Like, this is insane. It doesn't make their jobs any easier. I don't know. It's just mind-boggling to me that the American people are so just kind of like brainwashed into this stuff. Now, the other story. So, this is the ultimate follow-up to the Marjorie Taylor Greene thing. I know we've talked about this a lot. So, as we ideally known by now, or if you don't know, you can go back and look at the stuff that I've said, but I'll give you another update. You can follow me here. You can follow me on YouTube at Fresh Faces New Ideas, and you can follow me at Twitter at Faces Ideas, or you can go to the Discord, which is posted in the chat. And from there, we can discuss Marjorie Taylor Greene. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't understand the Holocaust, and this is used pretty hyperbolically. There's actually a lot of history that is used hyperbolically in wrong ways. 1984 is thrown around a lot. That's not obviously history, but it's used as a way to push things, and it's things that aren't understood correctly. So, 1984, the Holocaust is obviously one of them. There's a lot of really depressing data that we're going to go into that shows, how bad education is on these things, and the answer to obviously this is more education. So, the only thing that Americans do, like one of the few things that we actually cut funding for in order to make something more efficient, is education. And the reason we do that is because we try to privatize it into ways that doesn't work anyway, and that further eliminates how effective our schools are. So if you really wanted to argue, critical race theory is anti-American and it's it's antithetical to the U.S. system, well, but you also simultaneously argue for the tolerance paradox that everyone's voices could be heard. But that doesn't make any sense. But as I was saying, if we want to really be able to have a conversation about like actual facts and dealing with things on a higher level than we currently are, we need to invest more in education. This is public education. This is teaching things like the Holocaust. This is teaching things like the Tulsa Massacre. This is teaching things like what actually is socialism, what actually is communism, what is authoritarian, what do these terms mean? Because too often people in power, you throw them out in ways that are just ambiguous and either directly condescending, such as Marjorie Taylor Greene when she was referring to Joe Biden's Mark of the Beast, or as she's currently doing, which I'll get into in a second, when she said it was both communism and authoritarianism, which if you have 6 brain cells, understand that those are literally the opposite ends of the political spectrum. So it can't simultaneously be both. Or there's this Dinesh D'Souza's whole thing is just history without context. Is this idea that the Nazi party was actually socialist and not a right-wing party because they called themselves the National Socialist Party. So from that, we can see that, like, it just not understand. I mean, obviously, this goes into understanding history and understanding the Holocaust is understanding how these terms, morph. It's the same thing. Like, even if you argue, the Democrats were, the party of the KKK, like things like this, like not understanding how history shapes itself outside of one moment or out of a small period of time, just understanding the broader context of things is a huge problem. So the reason I bring this up is because Marjorie Taylor Greene, what she said was, Nancy Pelosi is basically treating us like second-class citizens, and that we're basically being forced to wear a gold star, and we're going to get marched off into camps and killed because we refuse to take a vaccine. Now, this is, on its face, both factually incorrect to what is happening and insanely insulting to all the people who actually died in the Holocaust. It is just unbelievable how little information she knows and anything. And the guy there was like, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. So then obviously she doubled down on this. I think she might have actually tripled down. Anyway, we see this thing a lot. This is not the first time this has happened. This is not even the first time it's happened here. In England, they had a protest about their lockdowns and people were wearing the yellow star. Now let's be clear, because the reason I have to keep repeating this is because the people who argue against this are baby-brained. And if you say, oh no, I'm not a baby-brained, yes you are. If your complaint is a mask is totalitarianism or authoritarianism or overreach of power, what is wrong with you? Do you not understand? I'm not even worried about the science. Do you not understand what a no shoot, no shirt, no service sign is? It's basically the same thing. In fact, that's more authoritarian in your worldview because it requires you to carry two things. You have to wear a shirt and shoes. A mask is basically a shirt for your face. Like, there is no... I'm sorry you can't comprehend even the basic science, but this idea that being required to wear this is somehow a impact on your freedom, or even the crazier ones, it's going to hurt you or it's going to scar children. No. If these are the thoughts that you have, you need to first stop watching whatever news source you're getting your information from, unless it's me. Obviously, continue to watch me. But the people who told you those things, you need to stop watching them. Because obviously you cannot understand reality from whatever else is going on around you. You're just incapable of having these thoughts. And look, if this is harsh, it's true, because it is so mind-numbingly stupid that this became such a debate. That masks were seen as this unbelievable outrage when it's simply just a piece of cloth. And yeah, you want to argue, oh, Fauci lied, Fauci didn't lie. They weren't, they had fears that they didn't present to the public. What he said was, we were afraid that we would run out of the N95 masks. And look, we have come to learn from this pandemic that the American people will not do things for the greater good of the American people. There is some segment of us that will not do the right thing because it would slightly inconvenience them. So if we get to this point where you already believe that masks are an impact on your freedom, it isn't that far a leap to think, oh, I'm absolutely being a second-class citizen. This is the same argument with, vaccine passports, which, let's be clear, I have discussed those in length, and I believe we should have them. We currently, once again, for those who aren't aware, have them. They exist. You have to prove your vaccinations to go to, or get further vaccinations to go to certain African countries. You have to prove your vaccinations in order to go to schools. You have to prove your vaccinations to go to camps. You have, not concentration camps, you freaking lunatics, like summer camps. And the reason for this is viruses spread and vaccinations work. So let's be clear on this. Wearing a mask is both not an imposition to you that is being forced on you by the government to take away your rights. And it is also not forcing you to be a second-class citizen. So, with that in mind, let's go look at this store. Nashville hat shop sorry for selling not vaccinated yellow Jewish stars. They apologize for this. This is what the star is. It literally is the Jewish star, and it says not vaccinated on it. Their response to this was basically like, hey, man, I wasn't trying to be insensitive, but I really do fear that this type of thing is coming. And I still have this belief, but I didn't mean to be insensitive. Look, I don't understand. Like, how, what type of thought process first off, the thought process you have to go through to think that this is a good idea. The only type of thought process you can have this is, I either don't understand the significance of what it is, or I absolutely understand the significance of what I'm doing, and the people I'm reaching for will think this is good. The problem is we're too often being pushed into having, I don't know why it just did that. These different type of views, not different type of views. People are thought into this. This is just so divorced from the reality of what is happening, and this is the thing that makes me that's even crazier is for the people who are arguing. Still the mass ones. I think that has shifted a little bit. The people who are still arguing about mass, people like Tommy Lauren, is such a stupid argument because they're currently going away. Like, people are getting vaccinated, so the need to wear the mask is lessened. Do I still think people should wear masks? Yeah. If you're going to an airport or you're taking a lot of public transit, you should probably still be wearing some type of mask. If you look at the levels of flu that we had in this country this year versus other years, it was like minuscule. It was incredibly low in comparison. So yeah, it is an effective way to deal with these things. And it's not an imposition on you. Now, for the vaccine stuff, look, we have enough data now to prove that not only does it work, it is not really dangerous. Because here's what it does. It does not protect you 100% from the virus, depending on which one you take. If you take the Johnson & Johnson, it's a 66% protection. And then if you take the Moderna and the Pfizer, is a 95% protection. Now, let's be clear what that means. The AstraZeneca one, I don't even think is approved in America. And I don't know what Sputnik does. That means that you're protected somewhere between 66 and 95% from getting a fatal dose of the virus. So, you can still get COVID and be asymptomatic. The only time you need to get tested if you have the vaccine and end up with COVID is if you have symptoms. The advantage of the vaccine is not only will you not spread it, but because you're less likely to get it, but even if you do get it, your case, instead of being deadly to mild, is more likely to be mild to asymptomatic. So it lessens the amount of damage that the actual the virus will do to you. So it's things like that. So this idea that, and this was something Tucker put out because he's the number one anti-vaxxer in history. I say that because even anti-vaxxers wouldn't argue that vaccines don't work. They would argue that they don't have the there's underlying, you don't know what's in it. You're not gonna have you're gonna get autism from it, or there's something else. And Tucker Carlson has outright said these vaccines don't work. And the problem with that is Tucker Carlson is like the number one in terms of watched person on television in a news fashion. He's not news. He doesn't do news. The other thing is he purposely misconstrues data to scare people. And then there's that other theory we'll talk about in a second. So what he said about the vaccine is that if you went to the VAERS system, that like 4,000 people have died from it. Now, keep in mind, that sounds like a big number if you're not given any context. When Tucker had that statement, we had something like 100 million Americans were fully vaccinated, We've given out like 200 million plus shots. So, in context of 200 million, 4,000 is a super tiny number. And the 4,000 number is vastly overreported because he just took deaths. He didn't take deaths from COVID, which the numbers is closer to 200. So out of 200 million, it's literally like a 1 in a million shot that you would get killed by COVID for taking the vaccine. And obviously, people who want to play the lottery have less odds than that, but they're still going to play the lottery, but they're not going to take the vaccine. Now, I've lost my train of thought. Anyway, look, get vaccinated, wear a mask. This is lunacy. Any person you see arguing that this has anything to do with the Holocaust or that this has anything to do with government mandates there's two things to say. One, if they're arguing there's a Holocaust, you need to stop having a conversation with that person because that person is detached from reality. Simple. The other one is if they tell you that a mask mandate or some type of or even the vaccine mandates, because if you're in the army, they pump you through so much stuff. You're given massive contests of stuff. Or a worker, an office, having a vaccine requirement is good. If they're still complaining for some reason, you find some crazy person arguing about masks, ask them what they feel about no shoot, no shoes, no shirt, no service signs. Ask them if that's government tyranny, because it's the same argument. Anyway, the reason we have things like this is because we have things like this. 31 states don't require schools to teach about the Holocaust. Now, like I mentioned in the opening, there is more to it than just that. There's other states that are, some states don't require that they teach about it, but they also don't, they say it's like encouraged. So there's, we have to change how we do schooling. We have to, because this idea that both America is perfect and it has no flaws, or it has some flaws, but they're not really that big a deal, or any of the other arguments about like why America shouldn't be, the greatest country ever, need to be taught. Things like the Holocaust, the reason it's the saying is never again is not because, it's never going to happen in the same direction again. It's so that you can say that it doesn't happen, something similar doesn't happen to it. That's why you have to learn about it. And the reason it was, once and we can forget about it, and instead of never again, is because it's something that could happen again. We have to learn more about our history. We have to understand more about, we have to learn more about the slavery, whether it's the 1619 Project or just teaching, the true horrors of it, not, things like Washington owned slaves, that they raped them, things like that. And then we have to, learn more about the Tulsa bombing. So we have to learn more about trans and gay people's fights for their equality, for African Americans, because part of the things that are happened is they're like subconsciously whitewashed. Most of the time when you see a picture of Dr. Martin Luther King or some type of video feed, it's in black and white. There are colored pictures of him, not like, and film with color of him. And the reason it's shown in black and white is because it's used to project this idea that it was something in the far past, that these issues are no longer prevalent today. And when they're brought up, they're considered, these issues were solved. Now, two things to this. One, I saw a really interesting quote. If you're going to argue that there's no systemic racism because there's no laws that specifically say it, so you're going to ignore the anecdotal evidence, not the anecdotal, the underlying evidence that it exists, but you believe that that social media companies are silencing conservatives when there's no law saying that they have to do that. How do you strike that balance? Because those things are at odds with each other. Because let's be clear, there is no data to prove that conservatives are being silenced on social media more than left-wing people are. The difference is one side cries about it so goddamn much. But look, there's a lot here. We have to, and this is another thing. This is my personal belief about teaching. We need a nationalized sex education course. And yes, obviously, I know people, get uncomfortable about this, or they have their religious arguments, but I think that we need a nationalized sex education course, and that when you're being taught sex ed, you have two ways of teaching it. If you're overly religious and you want to have your kid learn abstinence only, you should be able to be taught that. However, that should not be taught to everybody, because we have a mountain load of data to show that teaching people just abstinence only leads them unaware of a lot of things. They don't understand contraceptions. They don't understand STDs. They don't understand STIs. They don't understand how not to get pregnant. Like, it's such a limiting ideology that if in the sake of actually dealing with issues like teen pregnancy or lowering the abortion rates, you can do this by teaching people more. So there's more data to be given in these particular cases. And that's, look, the argument of, I don't want my kid because of my religious reasonings. I don't want my kid to learn about these other things. That's fine, man. But whatever minority of people that is who have these religious beliefs, you're allowed to have your religious beliefs. But for those of you who don't understand how this country works, your religious beliefs are yours. You have a right to them. What you don't have a right to is to input your religious beliefs onto me. So by having them not learn sex education outside of abstinence in certain areas, and the other problem with not having a nationalized sex education program is that you're not going to end up with people who are they'll teach different things in different school districts. So districts next to each other might not be taught the same thing, and that's a problem. So look, we need to put more funding into the schools in the correct way. Mostly, public schools need a lot more funding, and we need to teach things like slavery, and we need to teach it correctly. This idea that there is a generation of people in the South who will wave the Confederate battle flag and say, oh yeah, it's just about states' rights, and the immediate question to them isn't states' rights to do what? Or there's people out there who believe it's a war of northern aggression. Is a problem. We have to put more money into our schools, and the reason we need to do this is so that we can grow as a people, so that we don't repeat mistakes that require us to send soldiers and police officers into dangerous situations over and over and over again, so that the body count for Memorial Day for the just individual families is lessened. The ways to support our troops and keep this democracy that they fought for going is to educate people on the things that are actually going on, is to make sure that they are aware of their history and understand the impact of what is currently happening. Now, how do I come into this? Very simple. People don't have hours and hours and hours to follow all these news stories and watch all this and understand things in the way that I do. So my hope is that I'm able to impart basic understandings into things. Because one of the biggest issues we have in our politics is people who pay attention versus people who don't pay attention. So the hope is that I can impart the people who don't pay attention with more knowledge. And even if it's just explaining why a criticism doesn't make sense, or what a bill might be, or how to push back on something, every little bit helps. The more people are aware of what's happening in government, the better. The more likely we are going to be able to push for and help the things and get the things that we actually want. The push for the real bills that we want, the real changes that we want, the real changes that the American people say they want. And the more we fight for these things and we explain and we can teach them, the more likely they'll happen. Now, On the other hand, we have to contend with one part of our country and one political party that has appeared to lost any faith in democracy whatsoever. They've decided democracy is now an impediment to their goals, and they will try to deal with it. Now, why do I say that? Well, because the Republican Party is still doing things like this. Now, this is Sidney Powell. Sidney Powell, if you don't remember, was considered the Kraken. She was like the head of the Trump legal team when they were dealing with their voter suppression, their voter fraud laws. And in response to that, we've seen a massive wave of voter suppression. We will actually get to that. That'll be like the last thing we talk about is the Texas one. Look, Sidney Powell has said a lot of crazy things. If you read the Axios article, it is shocking what is in that. The things that she was arguing to Trump at one point, first off, they weren't aware of the people that they were having conversations with in the Oval Office and then the residency, her and Michael Flynn. But then one of the things she was arguing, according to this article, was that she could prove that Dominion machines were flipping votes from Trump to Biden and giving Biden wins in areas that Trump won. So, anyway, she got sued. And her legal defense was, reasonable people wouldn't believe her election fraud claims. This is her legal defense. No reasonable person can conclude that the statements were truly statements of fact. Now, this is the same thing Tucker Carlson used in Fox News in Tucker Carlson's defense, was that the people who believe me either know that I'm lying or can't reasonably believe the things that I'm saying are true. So why do I bring that up? Well, Sidney Powell was at this thing called, what is it called? For God and Country and Patriot Roundup. This was in Dallas. This was also attended by Michael Flynn. This is basically kind of a QAnon thing. Now, remember the statement I just gave you. This is from her lawyer as a legal defense. Sidney Powell, and this is something I was arguing with somebody today about, and people like Janet Ellis were part of this big lie that there was rampant voter fraud. Now, over and over again, it has been proved wrong. But for the record, when they looked for voter fraud in the 2016 election, because Trump was mad that he lost the popular vote by about 3 million votes, they found that the percentage of voter fraud across like history was 0.00000016. It's like 1,000 cases in like the last 50 years total. For there to have been voter fraud enough for Joe Biden to win this election, we're just talking about just Joe Biden, there would have had to have been somewhere between 40,000 and 7 million illegal votes. 40,000 if you're worried about the Electoral College, 7 million if you're talking about the popular vote. And for the scale of this to happen, both Obama judges, Trump judges, Bush judges would have all had to decide to get together with the Democratic Party and the media to get together and silence each other and all agreed to not talk about this. And somehow these thousands and thousands and thousands of moving parts that they were able to put together to create Joe Biden as the victor, they somehow failed to, on the same ballots, get a larger House majority and an actual majority in the Senate because they had to win the 2 runoff races. So somehow they managed to rig the election at the presidential level, but not on the same ballots down ballot. Also, there's 2 more things here. You either believe that the entire judicial system, because it was Trump and Obama and Bush judges who tossed all these cases because they were garbage, you either believe all of these things were part of a coup, which you don't believe in our judiciary system at all, and you think it needs to be removed, or you're a lawmaker who espouts these things, in which case you should immediately resign because you don't believe that your election is fair. So if you don't believe your election is, if you don't believe the Trump election was fairly done, your election can't be fairly done because it was on the same ballots. Anyway, now that we've once again dived into crazy land by debating all of these things, we need to talk about Sidney Powell. Now, Sidney Powell, and the other clip was the Michael Flynn clip about Myanmar. So I was watching it. So what happened is this, and it is, I don't know who's in charge of lighting, or if that clip was just taken for like a cell phone video, but watching it is just like impossible because you can't tell who the hell is talking. So apparently somebody asked Michael Flynn, why can't we do the coup that happened in Myanmar here? Like, why can't we just do a coup? And Michael Flynn's like, yeah, there's no reason. Now, for those of you who don't know, there was actually a military coup in Myanmar. This happened a couple months ago. And what happened was the military decided to overthrow the duly elected people in Myanmar. And from there was protests that have led to about 800 people, including 40 children, being killed by the military. So, that's what they're advocating for. Also, keep in mind, this is a funnier thing. If you truly believe Michael Flynn is a patriot, how come he forgot the Pledge of Allegiance? And this is not me being sarcastic. There is legitimately video of him saying at a rally that he went on this whole thing. This is our pledge. This is every word of this matters. Every word of this is sacred. We live and breathe by all these words. And so he's saying all this into a microphone, and he's leading the pledge. And in the middle of it, he forgets like half of the words. Anyway, back to Sidney Powell. Now, Sidney Powell is going to make claims here that are just not anywhere close to true.
We're in uncharted territory.
We're definitely in uncharted territory. There are cases where elections have been overturned, but there's never been one at the presidential level,
Right. So she is correct. There have been cases where the elections have been overturned. Generally, it's because of they argue about certain votes being thrown out and things like that. But these are very rare.
everybody will jump to point out. That doesn't mean that it can't be done, though. There's always a first case, and as far as I know, this is the first case of abject fraud and obtaining a coup of the United States of America.
Now, I have to keep bringing this up because this is worth mentioning over and over again. Sorry, my eyes are bothering me. Sidney Powell was part of Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis's crack team elite strike force, in which they, quoting Jenna Ellis, they had a fire hose of evidence that there was fraud. They proceeded to show none of it to a court. Their response was basically, you just got to believe us, bro. We have evidence, we just can't show you. In which case the court said, no, that's not how this works. So that just isn't true. Also, this idea that this is a coup is this underlying feeling that we have to push back against. It's this feeling of we can't believe in our democracy unless our guy wins. That's not how this works. This was not a coup. We had an election. Joe Biden won. So these all are crazy people.
So it's going to have to be dealt with. It should be that he can simply be reinstated, that a new inauguration date is set.
Hi, Big Papa Fascist. Look, so she does say this, and this particular statement's getting a lot of headlines, simply because she's not actually saying anything more. I don't know what she's implying could actually happen that would allow this to happen. We're talking about Memorial Day and how to push back and protect the things that the people who died for, and the dangers of the things that are being pushed in order to protect democracy. So let's continue.
And Biden is told to move out of the White House, and and President Trump should be moved back in. I'm sure there's not going to be credit for time lost, unfortunately, because the Constitution itself sets the date for inauguration. But
so this is also a lack of understanding of the Constitution. The Constitution set the date, but that changed. The 20th Amendment changed when the inauguration date was. That's why it's considered. That's why it's on the 20th. However, there are occasions. So if the 20th it falls on a Sunday, it's basically like a behind closed doors swearing in, and then the general ceremony that we come to understand as the swearing in takes place on that Monday. But everyone is still sworn in on the 20th. That's still how that works. But look, basically she's going to go on to say that Trump should be reinstated just because that he should be able to. Look, this whole thing that there's these people who are advocating for this type of, not like this is about among the tamest. Michael Flynn is advocating for a coup. You have Matt Gaetz who's advocating for political violence. You have in Nevada, you have Proud Boys actively threatening people and then potentially running for party in their state party. There's things like that. So we have true dangers to our country because of people believing this big lie. And look, I don't know how to reach these people. I don't know what amount of evidence could prove to them that what they believe is just not true, because evidence has come out over and over and over and over and over. Every time they come up with a new talking point, it is beaten. No, this has nothing to do with nationalism. I'm a person who lives in reality. And these things are, and people pushing this are they're just not in the same. They don't live in the same reality as us. If you actively believe that the Arizona audit is going to change anything, or you believe that I think they're trying one in Georgia and Arizona. Look, there's nothing. This election was on every level secured. And so the things we have to look at are the people who are all right, first off, that is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Why would I not be upset about this nation being the state? Because I fucking live here. Because I don't want crazy people trying to run the government. And I don't want crazy people who are advocating for violence to have stages like this. Nationalism doesn't just... I don't know what your definition of nationalism is, but I don't want this country to be destabilized. That's just insane that just because you don't want... if you set up... Based on what? Post your definition of nationalistic. I think there's no reason... There's no definition where you can argue like, hey, having a healthy democracy is and not having lunatics running around undermining it is being nationalistic, because that just doesn't make sense. No. So now we got to talk about the health of our democracy. Is this? We're going to talk about, the more that this moves on, the crazier it gets that they fucking block this. Now, hold on. First off, we're going to look at what nationalism is. I don't even understand what your argument would be that I was a nationalist because I don't want crazy people running around the country. Anyway, look. So, as I talk about this, I will every single... democracy is under attack. The nation is not under attack. The founding parts of our democracy are under attack. If you believe that the democracy is the nation, then I guess you can argue that that's under attack. But what do you mean in terms of the nation being under attack? Are we under attack from like a growth of stupidity? Yes. Are we under attack of a growth of lies and people not living in reality? Yes. But democracy itself is under attack. Look, so this commission, this January 6th commission, was amazingly fair for the Republicans. This would have been the perfect way for them to destroy any ability for people to actually look into what happens. Everything they asked for, they got. 50-50 split on the group. So it's 10 members, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats. The majority leader in the House and the Senate picked the chair, and the minority leader picked the co-chair. They just can't be current members. The only way to have a subpoena is for majority or for the chair and the co-chair to agree with. So as long as they don't agree on anything, this group has this commission had no teeth. So, in response to this, the Republicans first they threw John Katko under the bus, and then anyone else who they empowered to negotiate to this, they backed the bus right over them. As for what then happened, this was blocked 54-35. Now, in a healthy democracy, in a democracy where the majority rules, because that's how democracy works. Okay, so no. Okay. I'm not a socialist. I'm a democratic. I'm a social democrat. If you seem to think democracy is being subverted, right? I care about the general welfare of the people, and I believe that having a democracy is better for the general welfare of the people than having authoritarianism. This is not a hard sell. So democracy is absolutely being subverted. We have too many people who are, just in this example, this is minority rule. The entire Republican Party didn't even need to show up in order to stop this. In a healthy democracy, the 35 would not outweigh the power of the 54. They would not also represent like 87 million less people. Now, obviously, this doesn't equal 100. There was people who weren't there. Democracy is not authoritarian. That is not, no. No, a healthy democracy cannot be authoritarian because that's not how authoritarianism, otherwise those words would be synonymous with each other, which they are not. Because if you argue democracy is authoritarian, then that means Russia is a democracy. Yes, majority rules in a democracy because that's how the push is for. Democracy says that everyone has a vote and that the larger section of the vote is the higher percentage of the people that control. Authoritarianism is a single government with the single person controlling everything. It is a push for power's sake. Also, the other thing with this is if you do not remove the filibuster, elections have no consequences. What is the point of voting for? The minority is not oppressed because the minority still has a voice. You can become from the minority to the majority if you're pushing for because look, in a healthy democracy, but they do have a voice. Their voice is the things that they advocate for are represented by the people they elect. So if you are in a healthy democracy, what you truly have is a battle of ideas to decide what the people agree with more. Look, we're a democratic republic. All right, then what do you think America is? Because we're basically a captured democracy. But we're not getting to that. Basically, the way this should work is the people vote, and the people in charge follow the will of the voters. We currently don't have that because the minority is currently oppressing the majority in this case. Right, but the majority is currently being oppressed by the minority. This shows it. So how do we deal with this? The answer is we have to reform the filibuster. And how do we reform the filibuster? Well, there's a whole bunch of ways. We could outright get rid of it, which has been done for a couple of different things. We have the judges and Supreme Court justices no longer need to have a majority. They no longer need the 60 vote threshold. They just need to have 50 votes. We can do segment things similar to how we have reconciliation bills. Certain other bills could require only a 50 vote threshold. This could be things like voting rights. This could be things like making DC a state, which should just be a 50 vote threshold. Do you believe in America or not? Because I've stated this before. One of my videos, if you go check my my YouTube channel, is that literally the filibuster. That's majority suppressing the majority. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the government's control of things. The minority here is in charge. I mean, what are you arguing that No, because that's the argument. This is the only way that it can happen, because this is undemocratic. This is not, and because of that, the minority of opinions. So it spreads down from there. So because of the filibuster allowing minority rule, the ideas of the majority are no longer things like universal background checks, which have 97% approval among American people. Things like, no, the filibuster is not there to do that. The filibuster actually allows the minority to control the majority, because first off, the filibuster is not constitutional. It's not in the Constitution. It was what was happened was that no. Appeal to authority. No, the 97% thing. If 97% of people in a group agree on something, and the government has the ability to follow out, if they agree on a policy, if they agree on that policy, it's on the 3% to prove them wrong, but it's also on the 97. It's on the people who represent the 97% to attempt to enact that policy. It's the minority, because we have the filibuster, things that can't be pushed forward, like police reform. We can't push forward voting rights protections. We can't push forward. There's no argument to have that the filibuster actually helps in democracy. It is currently, look, if you understand, no. Harry Reid is, look, you have to understand the history of the filibuster. Prior to basically modern democracy, which started around, or to like more modern politics, which started around the Obama era, the filibuster was used exclusively to stop civil rights legislation from going forward. What happened around Obama was that Republicans realized they could just stop anything from working. And so Harry Reid, too late, decided that he was going to remove the filibuster for certain parts to allow the government to function on just a basic level, just baseline level for certain for certain aspects. Unfortunately, he did this so late. And why? The reason this happened is because that the Senate... No, it's not because of Harry Reid. Harry Reid set it for lower court nominees, and then Mitch McConnell nuked it for the Supreme Court. And the reason he had to change it for the... Yes, Harry Reid had to lower it for the lower court judges. And why did Harry Reid have to do that? This is all right. You guys weren't here, but this is what I was talking about when I started the stream. It's understanding history in a broader segment, not just in a simple moment. No, I would not argue for it. And let me explain why. Because the things that the Republicans want to push for on a national level can be done regardless of whether the filibuster exists or not. The things that the Democrats want to push for and that the majority of the American people want require the removal of the filibuster. Right. So, here is my argument against the filibuster. There is more popular legislation that is being currently stopped by the existence of the filibuster, and that should this legislation be enacted, the American people's lives will be improved in a way that they will realize that allowing a certain party to gain power is detrimental to them. Because that's how it currently stands. The Republican Party has no true ideas to push for. They're running on grievance, and they're running on just lunacy. They don't actually have any platforms. And any platform that currently existed in the Republican Party, tax cuts and deregulation, were both things that were done without the need No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that if we get rid of the filibuster, we will regret it. I'm sure at some point we will, but I think the short-term games will ultimately turn into longer-term games, which will okay, you're linking the video. All right. Anyway, look, the filibuster needs to go. I don't ultimately know if Manchin will ever step to it and change it anyway, but the fact that they blocked this and the fact that they don't think this is going to come out, or the information is going to come out anyway and just make them look worse, just makes no sense. So now we have to talk about the other thing that came out of the big lie, which is these voter suppression bills. Now, I'm sure we're going to have a conversation about this and people are going to argue with me. This idea of voter suppression, or these combating voter fraud bills, are solutions looking for a problem. I've talked about this over and over again. Lots of people have covered this. The idea that there's massive voter fraud that needs to be dealt with is just not bared out by the numbers. There's like 3 cases of voter fraud in this election. So in response to this, the Democrats had to do this. So Texas was going to pass an incredibly dangerous bill limiting this. The Georgia bill. So when you hear things like people say that the Georgia bill extended voting rights, they're just lying. And I've talked about this need for voter ID. I don't directly know if I've talked about it on Twitch, but I've referred to it a whole bunch of times on my YouTube. Let me see. Hold on. Oh, yes. Obviously, Mitch McConnell is going to say that he regrets this. Also, Mitch McConnell threatened corporations, which was like the funniest thing I've ever seen. So, yes. If you vote... So, in response to you, DFK, they can do that. But the problem is they're not just suppressing votes for their state elections. They're doing it for national elections. So, if you can't get power... You don't seem to have a problem with the fact that states can flip from red to blue. California used to be a red state. Texas might turn blue. Georgia was red for like 20 years before it just got flipped. Florida is a swing state. You don't happen to see how suppressing the vote in what is currently a red state, or whether it's a blue state or not, would shift the balance of power. If you do not allow people to take part in this, you can't get their opinions, and you're allowing more minority rule because you're discarding a large portion of the population. No, very quickly. No. DFK, we go over this all the time. There is no vote. There is no suppression of speech by the Democrats. Twitter is not the government. You have this disconnect between Twitter and speech. There is no, so this idea that it's not a proxy. It's the same thing as if you look at the data, they actually don't. The reason you think they do is because Republicans cry more than Democrats do. That's why they don't end up. No, Facebook is massively Republican. The reason that big tech seems to side with Democrats is because when you allow certain aspects of speech to go unregulated, it absolutely does. If you look at whose videos are more suppressed, now obviously this might have been a little more skewed because a lot of what Republicans have pushed recently breaks a lot of TOS. But when you look at some of these areas, specifically for Republican type speech, a lot of what they do is it turns into cesspools of violence. It turns into cesspools of Nazi rhetoric. It turns into all of these terrible things that these places don't want on their platforms. Also, it is always worth mentioning, these have nothing to do with the government. The government is not censoring speech because big tech is not government. This idea that we've had this discussion before. Okay, but answer me this. Which Democrat law allowed that? Because that's a different argument. And I made an argument about Twitch TOS, and I made it to Donald Trump. My argument to TOS is if you're going to uphold it on a world leader, you should uphold it on all of them. It's that, look, they're not, the Democrats and big tech are not the same. So this is a moot conversation. First off, people end up, yes, DFK. But first off, you seem to not understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the reason it started with Trump first was because he broke TOS consistently. And they allowed him to stay on because he was a world leader. And I've argued that over and over again, the reason that you're either going to do TOS for all world leaders or none of them. It's a very simple concept. They're either going to allow them all to break TOS with impunity and have no consequences, or they're going to have to crack down on all of them. But that's the argument. If they enforce it, they should enforce it equally. Not that it doesn't exist at all. Or that it's sided with one side. And also they have the algorithm. A lot of times they have the algorithms. That's why how you look at Facebook. If you look at Facebook, 65% of the people who are radicalized because of Facebook's algorithms. This is how QAnon grew. It's these ideas were pushed when people were searching for them, and they became radicalized due to that. So, for this law, the Democrats ultimately what they did was they left the chamber in order to stop the Republicans from having quorum so they can make this vote. And the things in this vote are, let's see. First off, Republicans call the bill election integrity measure a necessary to safeguard Texas elections from fraudulent votes, even though there's virtually no evidence of widespread voter fraud. Let's see if I can find what exactly was in this bill. Anyway, look. I've talked about this in the past. This bill was disgusting. So okay, so when it comes to directly for hate speech is different. That's a different type of speech. Look, if I were espousing to things that would get me, the things that are kicking me off, like if I was advocating for violence, or I was part of the reason that hate speech needs to be regulated is because it advocates for violence. The right doesn't believe that trans people should exist, period. And they advocate that they just lie about them. Look, the George Floyd case is something different. I've actually have a video on the Maxine Waters case thing. You can look. I don't think she was inciting violence. It's no. So look, there's a lot of context to a lot of the Maxine Waters stuff. It's the same thing that arguing that the Trump lawyers argued in the second impeachment, that the word fight just in itself argues. No, I don't think she was. In the same way that Donald Trump wasn't using his platform. If you argue that, then Donald Trump was doing the same thing for all the criminal investigations. No, I'm not saying only Republicans can incite violence. I'm saying you have to actually look at the context of what is happening. There is a certain level of discourse that takes place among the Republicans. You do not hear the Democrats argue that we should be violently cooing, that there's going to be an overthrow, that your way of life is going to be destroyed, that they're coming for your children, that they're coming for your livelihood, that they're going to force you to do things. There's certain type of context. There's a certain kind of speech. It's called stochastic terrorism. No, I'm not saying either of those things. I'm saying it is not an equivalency. And if you want, look, I know that this gets thrown a lot of the time. There are segments that are advocating for things that aren't true, for BLM. To throw all of BLM under the same umbrella is inaccurate. In the same way, I'm not throwing all Republicans under the same umbrella. The TOS issue ultimately comes down to right, I think you're agreeing with me. The TOS issue ultimately comes down to how is it going to be regulated? So the government has to decide if he was agreeing with me, because BLM universally is considered something, even though the BLM organization and the BLM movement are separate, and the individual things that they're arguing for are separate. A lot of the BLM, what was pushing for was police reform. This whole other thing with the end of the nuclear family and all of that, I think was from the organization, not the actual movement for the people on the ground. And obviously, there's going to be statements of people. There is the ACAB group that I don't agree with. But this is what I'm ultimately coming down to, is this is not equivalency. Also, for anyone in the chat, here's the Discord link. You can follow me here. You can follow me at YouTube at Fresh Faces New Ideas, and you can follow me at Fresh Faces. No. The Republicans said that BLM was a terrorist organization, and that they were racist because they were arguing for Black lives. And also, a lot of times that Republicans throw around the term Marxism, they're using it interchangeably without the context. They use Marxism, socialism, and communism interchangeably. It's not a funny spin. Look, you use Marxism for like everything. It's a boogeyman. In the same way that when you push for certain, when you use terms like cultural Bolshevism, look, I don't need to read Marx. I understand the theory. I do. But when you push things essential like you use the term cultural Marxism, you're advocating for Nazi talking points because that's where it came from. So where do you want to go with this? And look, I'm not advocating for socialism. You keep subscribing these things to me. There are streamers who are advocating for that. I'm not advocating for that. I'm advocating for social democracy. I'm advocating for things like Sweden and Denmark, where we have a larger social platform. And we cannot have these things if we do not protect the current democracy that we have. And the way to do that is to defeat these voter rights bills. The way to do this, cultural Marxism, is this idea of cult is this is also happening on the right. It is invading institutions. It's why communism and socialism are always portrayed in such a negative light, in the same way that that capitalism isn't. Right. What? If you look at most institutions, communism and socialism are considered negative. Look, this cultural Marxism is a Nazi talking point. It was originated. What do you mean? Name one. Would you name one for your argument? Look, this idea of cultural Marxism is a Bolshevik talking point. It came from the Nazis. It's a Nazi talking point. So look, we've lost colleges in the humanities. What do you mean, like social? What is the humanity? So what are you advocating for? That we shouldn't have higher learning, or that we should have a check on higher learning? Social science is like what? Political science is a social science. Is it not? Like, what specific social sciences are you saying are coming cultural Marxism and that are going to lead to what? Communism? Is that the argument? So you think we should get rid of political science? So does that mean Marco Rubio is actually a cultural Marxist? Because Marco Rubio has a social science degree. We look, this idea that colleges shouldn't teach things that don't lead you to a job is just an extension of a broken capitalist system. If the whole point of college is higher learning, you should things like that need to exist. All of them. Pull up the demographics of those who have degrees in social science. I don't even know what that means. Demographics of social science. Let me see if I can find it. If you can find a link to what exactly you're looking for. Now, Marco Rubio is never going to be the presidency. Okay. I don't know if this is what is this what you're is this what you're that's not the right thing. Is this what you're talking about? I don't even really know what I'm looking for. Diversity? The average age of a person in the workforce degree is 40. So this is age. I don't think this is what you're trying to argue. Right, it flipped. Yeah, so this is a graph about age. I don't. What are you trying to argue specifically for? Gender imbalance, most common degrees in the field. Men are more likely to study it than men. So ethnicity. So what is your argument here? Yeah, this data directly purports the opposite. Race and ethnicity by degrees awarded. Most common race or ethnicity, white, is number one by about a bajillion percent. Also, I don't even understand where you would get to that, because if you look in here's the data from that I was looking at. If you look at who's in charge, it's almost always straight white men. They have a vast majority of the power. And I don't understand what that has nothing to do with the cultural Marxism that you were arguing, because that has nothing to do with each other anyway. But the whole point of what this stream was really about is we have to hold on one second, guys. We have to push for truth, and we have to push for the reality that we live in. And the reality we live in is not that the election was stolen, that there was some type of coup, that Trump was elected. That's just not true. So when they use that as a basis, and they advocate for violence, or they advocate for these voter laws, there's just no proof in them. There is no voter fraud in any level that would cause an election to turn. It just doesn't exist. It's been studied over and over again. It's just the boogeyman. In the same way that there's this like gay agenda. It's scare words. But look, man, I think we. Oh, God damn it. Look, Dark Thoughts, haven't seen you in a while. Welcome back, buddy. I'll get to you in a second. DFK, the mail-in voter did say Biden. Actually, the reality, the biggest thing was COVID. COVID turned, if the, I missed you. COVID turned it for Biden. If it hadn't been for COVID, Trump would have landslided him. And yes, the reason that mail-in balloting saved Joe Biden is because Trump spent months telling his supporters, do not vote by mail. So they didn't. That doesn't make fraud. The votes in Maricopa have been audited, and if you want the votes in Maricopa audited, why are you not doing it for the election that is closest? Why are you only doing it for the Democrats? And also, why the fuck are you looking for bamboo fibers? And why didn't you get an actual company that does this? Why? Mail-in. I mean, I know you're memeing, but none of those things are true. But mail-in voting, mail-in voting is despite what people say, is not fraudulent. These voter suppression laws. I don't even know if I got to my point about voter ID. I think that if we're going to have a voter ID, which, contrary to the argument that people are making that voter ID is required and we can't verify without it, doesn't make any sense. It also goes against this argument that Republicans have made in the past that voter ID will actually win them elections, and also the this argument that HR 1 will get rid of voter IDs is just not true. So here is the pitch for voter ID. If you want voter ID, you should advocate for it as universal voter ID. So as soon as you are registered to vote, you automatically... Oh, thanks for the follow. Let's write a screenplay. I appreciate it. As soon as you get registered to vote, you are mailed a voter ID by the government. It costs nothing to replace. It costs nothing to change. It can be, you can, if you do not have your voter ID when you go to vote, you can use another form of identification to do it. As long as you sign a statement saying, I agree under threat of perjury that I am who I say I am, which is what happens. The problem with voter ID... Okay, that's obviously absurd, because that's like, you want a copy of their fingerprint. No, we're not giving everyone the database to that. You see, you've been gone for like 2 weeks, so now you got to go, you have to go back to memeing. So that's good. But yeah, look, voter ID is very simple. Yeah, policies and issues, which is what I was advocating for. I think we should have more people who are... Yeah, look, man, the whole point of this was, this fake... God, I really need a haircut, don't I? Is this fake push for people having... It's a fake patriotism for Memorial Day. Oh, thank you for the soldiers, but we're not going to help you. Thank you for your for laying down your lives for democracy. We're going to destroy. We don't currently believe it. Thank you for the security guards who protected us on January 6th. We're not going to look into it to figure out why 140 of you got hurt. It is voter restriction. It's the worst is when any part of the media is responding to somebody and their response is, this actually expands voting rights, or they don't actually push back on why voter ID is an issue, or they don't push back on the specific areas. Because if someone comes on and says, oh, do you not believe in voter rights? This is just about voter rights. Okay, I'll get to you in a second. The pushback needs to come from, oh, why are these corporations pushing back against having voter ID? Well, because there's things in that have more to do with the elections than just voter ID. Why are they able to change the board? Why is the Secretary of State no longer allowed to have power over the elections? It's things like that. Those are the type of things that need to be pushed back against for that need to be pushed back for. Well, okay, so look, I don't mind you having conversations. At this point, I've covered all the topics. I don't want to. We're just chatting. The beauty of this community is Jesus, what do you have a link for now? Let me take a look at this, and then I'll see what it is. Open. What is this? We're talking about the lab leak. I haven't looked into. I should have fucking known that was what you're doing. I haven't looked into the most recent stuff into it. Hey, listen, DFK is like number one, man. I don't know if it's he or she, so if I'm misgendering you, I apologize. He's always here. He's always asking me. He's always giving me these weird links and shit. I enjoy having conversations with him very much. As for the actual data for the lab leak stuff, I just haven't looked into it. I don't have a biology degree in which I could tell you whether or not this is true, but my general sense of this is, even if it's a lab leak, it doesn't justify the response from the U.S. to it. So, and also, this idea that it's a biological weapon, they literally made it in the reverse of a biological. Okay, fantastic. They made it, if this is a biological weapon, they made it in the reverse of how you would want a biological weapon to function. Right. If it ultimately comes out to that it is it came from a lab, then we should have more secure policies in dealing with this. But this idea that it is being weaponized, if you were going to, in Minecraft, develop a bioweapon, Face the Nation is who? This isn't Chuck Todd, right? Because Chuck Todd just gets rolled. I didn't even see this clip.
We go now to former FDA Commissioner.
I don't even know who this
Scott
is.
Gottlieb, who sits on the.
It varies. Face the Nation varies. But if you're going to build a bioweapon, what you would want is a low transmission, but a high mortality rate. Because what you want to do it is you want to target in specific areas, and then just wipe those out. Because if you had it as a fast acting, beat the press. No, because look, right. If it doesn't make sense that it was weaponized, because if it was weaponized, it wasn't effective. There's a lot of things that are going on. I don't think it was a lab, because there's other viruses that we've seen come out of this area. This is not the first COVID strain that happened. SARS was like this. MERS was like this. I don't think it's a lab leak. I also don't think the problem with if it comes out that it was a lab leak is that the Republicans are going to take that as a example that Trump did nothing wrong, and that all of the things that responded to. Well, if we're referring to this hypothetical that it was weaponized, they did a really fucking bad job at it. Trump did lots of things wrong. We had the worst deaths out of any country in the world. Hypothetically, if it was weaponized, why would you have a virus that spreads so quickly and doesn't kill people? Good. All right. DFK, I don't know if I've changed your minds on things, but I hope I have. I think Big Papa Fesh just left. But look, if you're going to weaponize a virus, you would want it to kill people at a high rate, but not spread too quickly. Because if it spreads too quickly, then it's going to take out way more people than you expected it to. And if you're going to, unless you're a lunatic who wants to kill everybody. Well, I mean, they make everything, like in that case, everything Trump does is China quality. But look, I'm kind of out of topics. And we've kind of lost the point. Look, the voter suppression bills are un-American. Making D.C. not a state. Okay, you know what? Fuck it. We'll watch the clip. My laugh or their laugh in the video. Let's take a look at this. I don't even know why this came out of Microsoft Edge. So this is, who is he talking to? Is this just a clip? Gottlieb says the side of the ledger suggesting. Okay. My chuckle. Oh, yeah, I'm pretty funny. Let's see what they say.
The board of Pfizer and joins us from Westport, Connecticut.
Who is-
He has just finished work. We go now to former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb, who sits on the board of Pfizer and joins us from Westport, Connecticut. He has just finished work on a book that will be out this fall titled Uncontrolled Spread: Why COVID-19 Crushed Us and How We Can Defeat the Next Pandemic. Good morning, Dr. Gottlieb.
Good morning.
So usually when we're together, we talk about the past and look towards the future, but
Just because, all right, so a thing on political books, they're all kind of ridiculous. I remember, so I have never, if when we get to what is when we get like 50 followers, I'll do like an AMA, or maybe I'll do an AMA like once we have a more consistent following. And I'm sure people will ask me about but I used to be a Republican when I was younger. And I remember arguing with people about the war in Iraq, and the reason that we need to go in is because somebody wrote a book called "There's a Bomb in My Garden," arguing that they had, they could find nuclear weapons.
this week we've been talking a lot about the past. Why is it that there is now a conversation about how this pandemic started, and why is that important?
Well, look, I think the challenge is that the side of
So, I don't believe so. So this idea that you used to be a Republican, everyone becomes a Republican when they get older, I don't think will happen to this generation. Because the Republican Party that currently exists is not the Republican Party that was, fantasized about in the 50s and the 60s and the previous one. The hope is that I seem like a Republican because the rest of the nation has moved further to the left of me.
the ledger that suggests that this could have come out of a lab has continued to expand, and the side of the ledger that suggests that this could have come from a zoonotic source, come out of nature, really hasn't budged. And if anything, you can argue that that side of the ledger has contracted, because we've done an exhaustive search for the so-called intermediate host, the animal that could have been a host to this virus before it spread to humans. We have not found such an animal. We've also fully disproven the market, the food market that was initially implicated in the original outbreak as the source of the outbreak. And so
now, you see, the problem with me watching this video is I hope that the future generations look back on me and tell me that I know there's already people who are further left than me. I hope they tell me I'm not progressive enough now because, I have a cell phone and I have, I eat red meat or things like that, because that means we're moving in the right direction. If I'm considered a Republican, I think we're in a healthy place. The other thing with this video is I don't have enough background or research into looking at this stuff to know whether or not he's saying is factually correct. And I don't know if he's going to get any pushback either.
that side of the ledger probably has shrunken, and China could provide evidence that would be exculpatory here. They could provide the blood samples from those who worked in the lab in Wuhan. They've refused to do that. They could provide the source strains, some of the original strains. They've refused to do that. They could provide access to some of the early samples that we could sequence. They could provide an inventory of what was in the lab, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the lab that has been implicated in a potential lab leak. They have refused to do that. And we know that that lab was poorly constructed, had poor controls. That was reported at the time that it was first opened. We know the lab was engaging in very high-risk research, including infecting transgenic animals with fully human immune systems. We know.
So this sounds like gain of function, and I don't know. Like I've said, I could table this and do this like a whole stream of this, and that might be what I do, but I don't have the background to say whether or not he's just making talking points or the information he's pulling from is accurate. No, he does have that expertise. That's what he's spent his whole life on is infectious diseases. Now, the China not, allowing people into the lab and stuff is different.
We're working with SARS-like viruses that have never been disclosed before, and now we have new evidence that some lab workers became infected right at the time that this virus was believed to be first introduced.
So this story that he's referring to, I know for a fact is misleading. From what I've seen about this is a misleading story in general.
Publicly reported. So that side of the ledger has expanded, and I think that's why there is renewed focus on this. In terms of your final question, why this is important, I think if we assess that there is a probability or a possibility...
No, that's actually not true. People did see this coming. We actually had a pandemic response playbook under the Obama administration, and we had a pandemic response team in China, both of which were either ignored or removed by the Trump administration. There have been scientists saying things like this. I mean, I remember hearing about superbugs like a decade ago. So it's not that nobody saw this coming. It's that the people in charge did not listen to the people who were smarter than them, which in Donald Trump's case is basically everybody.
Possibility that this came out of a lab. It's going to affect how we respond to this. We're going to need to focus on trying to get better controls in this sort of high-risk research going forward and get better controls over these BSL-4, these high-security labs that conduct this research. Incidentally, China was not conducting this research in a BSL-4 lab. They were doing it in a lower-security BSL-2 lab.
So in terms of looking at this going forward, back to the title of your book, How We Can Defeat the Next Pandemic, your argument is it's important.
Who is
to know how
he's
this...
the former hold on, let's take a look at who he is. Gottlieb. Who is he? Scott Gottlieb. An investor who served recognition. No, he's not. This doesn't appear to be. He is not an expert. Yes, but but his expertise is not in science. His expertise appears to be in financing. I mean, this is Wikipedia. What kind of doctor is Scott? Yeah, I don't think he's... Nothing I'm finding here is telling me directly that he's a medical doctor. I think he just happens to oversee a lot of this stuff.
Started in this case because there is this specific lab, but there have been also other cases where security has been lax and there have been leaks. And so it's important to figure out what happened here in order to kind of lock the doors tight to keep it from happening again.
That's right. These kinds of lab leaks happen all the time, actually. Even here in the United States, we've had mishaps. And in China, the last 6 known outbreaks of SARS-1 have been out of labs, including the last known outbreak, which was a pretty extensive outbreak that China initially wouldn't disclose that it came out of a lab. It was only disclosed finally by some journalists that were able to trace that outbreak back to a laboratory. So it's important to understand what the possibility is that this came out of a lab, so we could focus more international attention on trying to get better inventories around these labs, what they're doing, better security, make sure they're properly built. We need to also look at public health through the lens of national security. This was an asymmetric harm to the United States. COVID hurt the U.S. a lot more than it hurt many other countries. And that's another thing I talk about in the book, looking at these kinds of risks through the lens of national security, including getting our intelligence services more engaged in this mission. Traditionally, we've relied on international conventions and scientists working together, multilateral agreements, to try to assess the risks and try to uncover these kinds of outbreaks. I think we also need to get better surveillance in place and use our tools of national security to help engage in that mission as well.
If there were an answer to this question, would it help with any way in which we are covering and responding to the coronavirus now? In other words, dealing with variants or anything? Is there a public health benefit to knowing this at this moment?
Not right now.
Okay, all right. So, okay, so there's difference thing. We should obviously listen to the scientists who study this. The national security issues are... I don't know how much national security issue he was advocating for. And I think that's something we're going to have a different conversation with. As for this, look, I'm going to apologize. I'm getting a headache, so I think I'm going to end it here. I do appreciate you guys coming back. I hope you guys have a good break. Thank you, everyone who's here. So I will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. EST, like I always am. As always, hold on. That is not the right information. Give me 1 second. DFK, I think you should join the Discord so that you can send me all of the links that you're looking for. And you want me to check them out so I can check them in advance. But if you're interested, follow me on the Discord, follow me here, follow me on YouTube at Fresh Faces New Ideas, and follow me at Faces Ideas. But till then, guys, have a great day off, have a great weekend. I appreciate everyone who was here, and I'll be back with you guys tomorrow.